I evoke Hecate for a working, and like all the dogs don't bark in the neighborhood right away, then but she's communicating in her other epithets, you kind of learn, and maybe her more subtle epithets, like you kind of learn that these things communicate differently or show up differently because you've honed in on these two unique spirit communication ways. It's beautiful to see, really, but like just like the uproar of queer folks like taking on Lucifer in any form that they find them in, which I think is totally suitable because the idea behind Lucifer is to spread light and to spread themselves in the sexual aspect, in the spiritual aspect, in the all kinds of aspects. It's to spread themselves.
Hello and welcome to the Spirit Box podcast, where we explore folklore, magic, the world of the spirits, and everything in between. Today we are joined by a traditional witch and host of the Lavender Scare podcast, Keanu Baxter. Keanu takes us through their journey into witchcraft, rootwork, and ancestral magic, and demonstrates the need for patience and consistency in practice. We discuss their relationship with Hecate and Lucifer respectively, and how these two great spirits complement each other. We get into animism and witchcraft and the nature of transformation and how igniting the witch flame affects not just our magic, but our creative endeavours and our communication. Keanu takes us through the goal of their show, The Lavender Scare, and how they use their podcast as a creative outlet, with music and guests chatting the weird, wild places, occult and queerness of witchcraft. A place for folks to feel safe, seen, and have fun. In the Plus show, Keanu explains how they magically play with technology, incorporating the planetary hertz sounds in their witchcraft. Really interesting, really interesting stuff. And they discuss how their ancestors come to the fore when working with plant medicines, and we get a remarkable account of their work with the spirit of the San Pedro cactus and the experience known as the ascent into the sun. Now, if you want to hear the Plus show, it's very simple to do so. Simply join the Patreon and get the entire Plus show back catalogue and all the bonus show extras. And if you're watching this on YouTube or any other video platforms, remember to subscribe and hit that notification button. You know the drill. Right, let's get on with the show. So, Keanu Baxter, you're very welcome to the Spirit Box. Nice to have you on the show.
Thank you. I want to say thank you right off the bat. I've been a huge fan, listened to every episode now, so this is a huge honor, and thank you.
Oh, that's really nice of you to say. So, and equally, thank you for having me on your show. It was just before Christmas we did it. It was or a bit we did one around Halloween, and then a couple of months. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's one of, and they're both my highest episodes so far, so they're really great episodes.
Ah, brilliant. Well, you're very welcome. It's nice to be able to return the favor, and so to get the show on the road, I'm really interested in kind of building out people's journey into this space. And when we spoke originally, we both spoke about Lucifer and the Dark Man off the back of Shuli's show. Mm-hmm. And I mean, naturally, because I'm obviously clearly obsessed by this, but
as one becomes.
yeah, totally. How did you get there? How did it start? I mean, from what I keep hearing from people, a lot of this starts, at a very young age. So I kind of wanted to get your, what's your origin story?
What's my origin story? Well, I grew up super Christian, so I was very aware of Lucifer as Satan and all that stuff. I'm mixed too, so I'm half black and half white. And the black side of my family, my grandma and grandpa were exorcists and preachers, and they built their church with their bare hands. So there's a lot of religious and spiritual upbringing. But when I sort of came to terms with my sexuality and who I was as a person, that kind of stuff left the forefront for me. And there was a lot of turbulence growing up, and you go through that moment of like, is any of this real type of stuff, and you just kind of leave all of it to the wayside. And when I was 21 or 22, I was living with a bunch of roommates that I fucking hated, and I had my brand new puppy, and it just wasn't a good environment for her. And I remember it was just like one of those miserable days you have with your roommates where like nothing works, no one did the dishes, like everything sucks. And I just remember looking up at the full moon and just like begging the moon. And I didn't know where this came from. It was just a moment of like I was out there with my dog, and I just looked up at the moon, and it was like, well, I haven't prayed in a while, and like you're right there. And I just remember crying to the moon and being like, please get me out of this situation, like please. And like from that moment on, like it sounds like pretty fairy tale esque or whatever, but from that moment on, my life just started like unraveling for the better, and like all of these horrible things started falling to the wayside basically. And I was like, there's something here. Like there's something here, because it just didn't make sense in the perfect sort of way, for all of this to unfold. And then um I started diving a little bit into like hoodoo and root work and sort of like my ancestral practices first, because as like a mixed person, a queer mixed person, I kind of like stay in a liminal space in my life. Like I am this very liminal type of um, person in my everyday life. When I wake up, I can't choose to be liminal, just what I live. And so I wanted to dive deeper into my ancestral practices, and on the black side of my family. And a lot of things just started coming very natural to me, and not as like but a lot of things that I read just made sense to me right away. um, and I went online, as one in this age does, to like do more research. And I met my two spiritual, well, it's a coven of them, but my two main spiritual mentors on TikTok of all things. And like I'm one of the people where it's like the internet is a place for like art and sharing thoughts and space and community, but like trust like that, oof. So it was pretty amazing for me to trust right away from these people I've never fucking met. And they're Cat and Cauldron online, and they have a coven in Utah. And um yeah, Michael was just this like insurmountable force of like Hecate, um like they're an Italian folk, like by generation. Like Michael's mom is, Michael's grandma is, Michael's grandma's the matriarch, I think. And they, Michael and Austin, Michael's partner, would just give me lessons basically and like homework. And it was really good for me because I needed sort of um, the stability and like the repetition, because I had never really had that. And so, especially within a spiritual practice, and at the time, I was working as a case manager for transitional age youth for queer and non-binary folks, 18 through 24. And it was just like one of my favorite jobs I've ever had, besides the job I have now. But it was also so much work for so little pay. And I was going through a crisis where like I was not sure if I was. It was right when the pandemic started too, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to keep my apartment. And I reached out to Michael and was like, if I just like release myself to this, and like I didn't even want to say the word right away, right? But it's like, if I just release myself to this, like, like can I get myself out of the situation? And Michael was like, yeah, do these things. And I did those things. And things just became very, very magical, very fast. And it was almost overwhelming at first. And I think on our episode, Derek, when we talked to the Lucifer episode, I mentioned like, you when you're starting to practice, you kind of look back at your childhood, and you're like, and these moments of like, that I was also an only child. So these moments of like you look back, you're like, wait, that may have been like spirit communication, or like that may have been, instead of that imaginary friend, may have actually been a spirit. And I started kind of looking back at my life like that and realizing um, that you can't really escape from these things. And if one does try or doesn't even acknowledge, it gets kind of worse sometimes. And so, yeah, I just dove into it. And I first started off with just devoting everything I had to Hecate for like the first like almost year before I introduced any other spirits or any other spirits introduced themselves to me. And then Sirius, the dog star, who in my practice is kind of related to Hermes Anubis, as a dog messenger spirit of the dead, kind of popped up into my life, and I attune it to like um, those like sniffer hounds, where they just kind of sniff out your direction and where you're supposed to go in a spiritual practice, and he just kept leading me in these really right decisions, and yeah, and now here I am. And I mean, and if you want like Lucifer involved in it too, I was practicing with Hecate for a really long time, and Michael had sent me the Gospel of Aradia to read as homework, I think, and because that's a lot of their practice too. Is their practice is highly Diana, Hecate, Aradia, and Lucifer heavy, and I read it and it just like clicked for me. Like whether it's it's whether it's fake, it's real, whatever the argument is, like it clicked for me and it clicks for people. And um, yeah, and he just kind of he them they like it just kind of popped into my life as this like blazing fucking flame and burned all this bullshit away from me, and like just became, yeah, my light, as like romantic as it sounds, like just became my light on top of Hecate's torch, and it just made sense and fit in my practice very nicely.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's really interesting that things got more intense for you as kind of lockdown first hit. Because I noticed, and this might be me projecting, but do let me know your thoughts on this. But I noticed a big spike, like in magical energy, um, whatever was happening, like psychically or from a kind of a magical perspective. All of a sudden, it's like boom,
Yeah.
so much stuff came forth.
Yeah, I mean, I have a few theories on that because I totally agree with you. If you don't mind me sharing,
Oh, go for it.
um, yeah, I think a part of it was, I think there was, and asking a few of my friends that are like astrology, like nerds in the best way possible, astrology nerds, like they also said there was like the shift in the stars. And I truly believe, um, in times of crisis, and in times of like mass chaos, that that's kind of when witches always pop up in history, throughout history. And I think it's because we offer a lot of things, negative and positive. We offer something else to yell at, and we also offer a way out of um, the chaos and turmoil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that fundamental liminality as well, isn't it? Like that um, you need these people who can navigate those liminal spaces and that liminal space between order and chaos. When things are at their, well, no, when you're in chaos, I don't think it's that liminal.
Yeah.
We'll wind that back.
Yeah.
Getting kind of you help you navigate that chaos. Because I mean, I think there's something inherently chaotic about witches.
Yes.
That they just have an ability just to slightly swim through that. Not with impunity. No one has impunity. None of that, but, But yeah, I think about it a lot, and I think in time I'll talk a bit more about it. I need to gather my thoughts on it, but there's definite something punched through. You know, the veil got thinner, or something big. You know, big got through. You know,
Totally.
yeah. And that's lovely that you work with Hecate and Lucifer. You know, I know a lot of people who say that they're very complementary.
Yeah, they are.
Mhm.
It's really fascinating sometimes. They feel completely different when worked separate, but when working together or honoring together, it's this like bold, brilliant flame. It's really beautiful to try to like explain. It's very poetic, I feel sometimes, um, because they do match so well together. And it's really fascinating too. Sometimes, like getting in like nerdy spiritual stuff. Like I like to write down like my feelings and when certain things hit, and like when spirit hits, and it's almost the same. Like when I look back at my notes, like it's almost the same sort of like awe moment where everything becomes like illuminated and but also you know which path to take.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so I think it's just really beautiful.
That's cool. That's lovely. Um, one thing I've noticed from your Instagram, I mean, and kind of obviously your name, the Lavendula, you know, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but
Yeah.
plants play a big part in I would hazard not just your practice, but kind of in all aspects of your life. Um, and I totally get that, you know, and it's one of those things where when I see that kind of affinity for plants and nature, that I'm just like I'm so there. I get it. You know, and has that always been kind of part of your your makeup? Have you always been drawn to that space,
Yeah,
that world, rather?
actually,
Yeah.
yeah. Growing up, my grandparents had a beautiful rose garden, and I was introduced into like working in the dirt at a very young age. And like when I was like in school and thought I wanted to like go to college and major in something. Not that I still can't do that, but like when I was on that sort of a path, I wanted to do something with like plants or art. Those are like my only two options that I really gave my parents. Was like if I'm going to go to college, it's going to be plants or art. Like that's um, and I think it was also a big help. My mom actually, she's a practitioner, and she stopped practicing for when she was pregnant with me, and kind of gave it up for a little bit. And my practicing reignited her flame, and she gave me her first Book of Shadows page as like this like really cool moment of like us coming together in this. Um, and she used to tell me stories about like when I was a kid, like I would sit, so again, I was a only child, like I would sit like under the rose bushes and like talk to the roses because I thought that they were my friends. And like my dad was this sort of like Christian like hippie. It was like the 90s and early 2000s for him. So like it was like this like very like uh Jews for Jesus Christian hippie type of like thing going on with him. And so I grew up on like Venice Beach a lot and like drinking herbal teas very young and like doing all of those things for Christ. and yeah, so I just always found them really fascinating, and they're just so fucking cool. Like the way that plants work, and I barely know anything about them really, but like the stuff that I do know, they're really fucking cool, and they're alive, you know, and like they're just magic to that, I think, in itself. And it's also, I think plants are also uh, obviously a really uh, beautiful way to look at the life cycle. So yeah, save the plant, save the tree.
Yeah, too right, too right. No, I'm really like I'm super passionate um about plants, and and the natural world, and I just like it's just so brilliant to see, other people who share that passion. It really is amazing. Um, and in terms of your magical practice, how much does what you grow or play part?
Yeah, it's an instrumental part. Like, I don't think my practice would be my practice if it weren't for plant ally. Because again, that's kind of how I was reintroduced into this and taught by my mentors, where ancestors, plants, and then your spirit, like your other spirit, and like that. Um, and it was drilled into in the nicest way possible. So, Michael, if you're listening, I don't mean like drilled, but like in the nicest way possible. It was drilled into me, like ancestors, plants, then your spirit, ancestors, plants, then your spirit, because ancestors give you the life that you have, and plants sustain the life that you have. And then your spirits kind of guide you on that path that your life's on. And so I I really fuck with poisons that can also be psychoactive. So bergamantia, datura, nightshade in very small doses. Psilocybin mushrooms, cannabis plays a really important role. Ancestral for me as well. Um, and lavender, of course. Like I really fucking I love lavender. It's my favorite smell. It's my favorite color. It's my favorite plant. All four different types. It's just a color and a. I wouldn't even consider it a color at this point. I think it's its own kind of spirit for me. It's kind of amalgamated into its own sort of being. Uh, if people are interested in like color magic, which there's lots of conversations on, but for me, it's just sort of like my power color. And so is the plant. It does a lot for me. It doesn't just do what it normally does for me, but it brings happiness into my life. And so, with that sort of addition into my life, I can work the best. So, it's also like an energizer, a protector for me. I give blood to these plants. Like, I think if that's like okay to talk about, a lot of my spirit. Okay, cool. A lot of my spirit, my most tight spirit interactions and most tight spirit relationships, I offer up a piece of myself to them, and then I just water and take care of them, and I don't ask anything. I don't harvest anything of them. I just sit with them. I give my blood. I give water, and like um, maybe I'll put some like honey a little bit off to the side away from the roots for the spirit or whatever. Not a lot, but and I just do that over and over again before I even like harvest any to use magically or medicinally. Um, and it's a really fascinating journey because it teaches one patience, and it also teaches one like to like listen. And something my dad told me when we used to camp a lot too, so that's probably what plays a big part of my nature, because we didn't have a lot of money growing up, so camping was the cheapest sort of way to have fun. And and so I remember one thing that'll stick with me probably till I die is like it was like a kind of a windy day, and my dad and I were camping in this like meadow in Round Meadow, Big Bear, California, and we were right in the middle of this meadow, and like the trees were like rustling and the wind was blowing through it, and my dad looked up and said, "Always listen to the trees when the wind blows through them because it's them talking to you." And like that had just like I don't know what or how, but like that just like stayed with me forever. And um yeah, so those are big points in my life where plants kind of come into play.
Fascinating, really fascinating. I really unpacking that process that you that ritual, kind of that long ritual that you engage with your plants. That's fantastic. I really do love that. Like and you're so right about patience. Yeah, that's a really strong observation. Um, you forget about it sometimes, but that's what it is.
Mm,
Isn't it? It's when you look at other aspects of modern life, that patience is almost disappeared from. It's
mm,
we don't experience it in most ways, do we? We're so used to kind of instantaneous, next day delivery, Uber
Yeah.
Eats. You can just kind of dial up everything. Where you can't do that if you're making your own tea. If you're making
No,
your own
you
mint tea,
can't.
like what does make me laugh though is like I spent a lot of time going like, okay, I want to make myself my own kind of tea for the winter, and made like grew a lot of chamomile and lemon balm and mint to make this like it's gonna be my nice nighttime tea, which I rarely ever use. I've put all this effort into it, rarely ever use. Just drink regular like super strong tea that my mum sends me from Ireland, because I'm like, I have to have Barry's, mum. I don't want any of this English rubbish. I need my proper Irish tea. Uh, for some reason, she got really into tea the last 3 months. But I made this tea, like the chamomile and mint, and you go through the process of like sowing the seeds, growing it. It takes 60 days to the plant even gets close to being harvested, and then the chamomile throughout the summer, you're plucking the flower heads and drying them. And I just slowly store them up, and I reckon I'd maybe get like, I'm trying to think of an American way to say this, but like 16 ounces of tea. How do you measure tea? Is it like ounces?
16 ounces, yeah, yeah.
Something like that of like tea by the end of the summer. And there's two things about it. So the first thing is that, like, and I don't know if you noticed this as well, but one, I have a real high expectation for this tea that it's going to be absolutely incredible. Right?
Yes.
Right. And it's like, it's going to be everything you've ever tasted in the shop, all that kind of stuff. And it invariably, it's not amazing. Like it's good, but it's not like amazing. But that's kind of part of the patience thing as well. Like the other part of the patience thing is like we're overstimulated, so you get all these like really kind of like condensed and like really magnified tastes that are added to kind of most of our food. So when you taste something that comes from the natural world, like in its purest form, nothing, just water is added to it, and you get the subtlety of that flavor. Like, yeah, it's okay, but basically you made me realize that like patience is something that I really have to constantly remind myself and learn again, and that my taste buds have almost been completely destroyed by a lifetime.
Absolutely.
Like that you just get kind of numb to it, and it's such a good analogy for, like you were saying, like like you plants, was that plants, ancestors, spirits. It's like
ancestors, plants, spirits.
That if you're not sensitive to the first two, how can you be sensitive to the third? Makes a lot of sense.
It was a really like when I really, because at first that sounds kind of like shitty, because you're thinking of like spirits and deities as like these like awe-inspiring, and they are very awe-inspiring, but like you think of them as awe-inspiring, so they kind of take over everything, and that's like your first, like that's the first thing you want to hit, is like summoning Lucifer on the dark, like but when I really like, because I'm like that too, just like you were saying, like we're so subjected to this, like these intense feelings. That's probably why I pick some pretty intense spirits too, but that we want that like super fucking like manifestation in front of us right then. And so we like jumped to that. And I think it was it was an eye opener for me when I calmed that down and I really put that into play of ancestors, plants, and spirits, because I started making a routine. I would come home from work, light my ancestral altar, change their water, and like water all my plants, and then or spray my plants or check on them or whatever, and then make dinner and then give my plate to my ancestors, and then I would do all of my magic. And so when I started really doing that, it really changed my perception of spirit communication and how different spirits communicate differently. Like, when I evoke Hecate for a working, and like all the dogs don't bark in the neighborhood right away, then but she's communicating in her other epithets, you kind of learn, and maybe her more subtle epithets, like you kind of learn that these things communicate differently or show up differently, because you've honed in on these two unique spirit communication ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And I like the way that you're kind of methodical in in how you're going through that process. Do you find that like that repetition and commitment and consistency, you know, has that through your practice, has that changed in other aspects of your life? Have you found it's grounded you or done
Oh,
anything different?
oh yes, yeah. I thought you were
Yeah,
going to say has that changed in my practice,
yeah,
because I still do that same
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but yeah, it has. It's made me more spatially aware, because again, these types of spirits interact differently spatially, um, and it's made me more. I wouldn't say like what's the word I'm looking for? Not on my tippy toes, but like very cognizant of how people act and interact with me. It's made me very um, methodical when it comes to like my non-spiritual activities or hobbies. Like I'm horrible with time. I will always be late, probably for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that. But the way that I'm late is way more methodical than it was. It's way less chaotic than it was. So, it's like that. So there's,
That's really funny. I like that. I'm
and
still late, but I'm better at being. I've just the lateness is not as bad. It's not as bad.
yes,
Yeah,
and that's progress.
there you go. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think what you're describing, uh, like it, you can just see the benefits of that kind of solo practice, and I think it's something that we don't really discuss, and I think it comes back again to that. You hit the nail on the head. I thought when we talk about, we have this thing in our heads that we expect this manifestation, you know, the kind of the IMAX manifestation, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, and that doesn't necessarily happen. I mean, some people it does, right? But you know, but it comes back to that kind of patience and subtlety, and that requires some time for us to develop. You know, um,
I mean, it even
yeah,
gets to the point sometimes. I like when I am working with Hecate. When I used to do the whole thing with her. Like I used to make a crossroads at my altar. I would be at the cross, like my local crossroads, and if I was home, like it would be a crossroads at my altar with like graveyard, the whole 9 yards. And like I would take pieces of my dog's hair I found on the floor and like put it in the middle and do this whole thing, right? And I still do that occasionally on the dark moon or full moon or in workings that I really need that sort of like hyped upness. Um, but I got so used to like the reaction from that, like my dog would be mid sleep, Toko would be mid sleep, and then the second the thing happened, she's up and barking and she's excited, and and yeah, and so even paying attention to like little things around you can be just as exciting, but remembering to pay attention to those little things, I think, is really important. Like I'm not gonna see like three fucking crows fly over my head while the dogs are barking and the mist is coming. That's not going to happen every time. But sometimes, if I look over at my dog and she's kind of having a wild dream in the middle of this Hecate location, okay, that might be, what I mean? Like, that's also equally exciting, perhaps.
talking about the crows just made me laugh. I I had this whole stage like where, well, not necessarily had a whole stage, but like my partner, you know, she'd be like, "Oh Jesus, like look, not everything is some symbol, okay, right?" Like she's very much kind of a very grounded normie, you know, and then I was in the garden one morning, and I went down the end of the garden. As I came back up, there was a crow, kind of lying face down, like wings spread, just kind of right, kind of middle of my path, you know. And I'm
Hmm.
like, that wasn't there 30 seconds ago, you know. What
Right.
the fuck, you know? So I call my partner, and we're like, look at this sign from God. Right. And, like, she doesn't even bat an eyelid. She just shouts out the window, "It hit the window! Shut up with your bullshit!" just straight in. I was like, okay, I see. Oh well, never mind.
Sort of straighten you out right
Yeah,
away.
yeah. Keep my feet firmly on the ground, So that was yeah.
We need that sometimes, though.
Oh
Even
God, yeah,
like
yeah,
Austin, my best friend, like, and my sister in Christ, like,
yeah.
we do that to each other sometimes. Like, I'll text Austin, I'd be like, "There's this fucking thing going on. It's the devil, I swear." And then Austin would be like, "Girl, it's literally like it's raining outside. Like, like it's the weather." Like,
Yeah. That's really good. Yeah, I think it's needed, isn't it? Yeah. It's such a fine line, isn't it? It's just such a fine line to try and thread without kind of, spilling into the world where like everything is synchronicity, everything is a sign. I remember chatting to Phil Hine about this. We went for a pint a couple of years ago to catch up. I think it was maybe in the really early days of this show. I was going to interview him, and we were kind of chatting about what we would chatting about what we were going to chat about, and and he mentioned around this subject of kind of like, to the point where you're getting when people can get to the point where they really will have trouble functioning in kind of the mundane world, right? If they're seeing everything as what that mean, that they start to get into kind of like magical overdrive where they spot magical patterns that really aren't there. Well, I mean, I don't know if they're there or not, but they get into that headspace
right.
where they're doing that. And he told me that he knew a guy who let me gather my thoughts on this one. He knew so he knew a guy who used to scry a packet of pot noodles every day before he went out. So he used to stare into this open packet of noodles to kind of look for kind of auguries. So
This teriyaki beef is gonna tell my future, dog. I swear.
I mean, in fairness, it's in a lot of ways it's no stranger than reading tea leaves. Why not pot noodle? I mean, there were chaos magicians, right? They would have done that kind of thing, but it really did make me laugh. But yeah, I do. Yeah, it comes back to me for me, kind of listening to how you describe your practice of that consistency and that attention to space that it sounds like you're just developing. And no, I don't mean like you're just developing. I mean you've just consistently worked to develop that, like methodically, that awareness of space, awareness of subtlety, and knowing when you need to do a big boom and knowing when kind of actually this level's fine, of how you practice your rituals. Yeah,
Well,
that's
because
really
I think
great.
it also, thank you. I think it also, like, if you call yourself a witch, like with a capital W, um, whatever that could mean, right? But like, if your title or you're self proclaiming that you're a witch, that inherently, and maybe this is a hot take, I hope it's not, but like that inherently comes with being an animist and being that spirit flows through everything. And so like that's a nice reminder for me when I'm sort of getting out of that space, is like, okay, so if I self-title myself as this, then that means like these are sort of the ideals, can change and mold and over time also, but animism is sort of like very anchoring to witchcraft, especially like folkloric and traditional witchcraft. And so like it kind of helps me. Like, I don't know if you, okay, so this may be a little wild thing, but I don't know if you watch any anime, but there's a character in Naruto where he's blind, but he just kills it. Like his like jujitsu, his martial art is just fucking gnarly, and he just eats every time. But he sees through his feet touching the ground, basically. And that to me is a very, yeah. And so that to me is a very, it's kind of almost not in such the anime character way, but it's kind of how I do sit with everything. Is it's a mixture of that animistic spirit flowing through everything, and just like planting your feet, like really grounding yourself and trying to feel everything through your feet, or trying to feel everything without all of your senses, right? Because then these other senses are heightened. So,
I mean, and your point on animism, I entirely agree. You know, it's not a hot take here. I totally agree with you on that. Okay,
cool.
You know, yeah, I think it's. I mean, for in my experience of witchcraft, it's impossible not to be. Like, it's impossible not to have an animistic worldview. You know,
Yeah,
and certainly how the dark man, when he turns up as a composite being, you know, he's telling you, you know, this is an animist world. Like, literally, oh look, I'm half animal, half human being. You know,
right.
you get it. You know, like, but okay, I get it. You know, like it seems to be like a consistent thing. I mean, I don't know. I like my witchcraft is very much, you know, it's from these islands, you know, and like it's steeped in that lore. There's bits from various different kind of crafts around the world, but I think the point of differentiation would be what you might term as a traditional witchcraft, you know, which seems to be a rural thing, you know,
Yeah.
or I mean, that's a. Yeah, I think I'll go with that. I think it's a rural thing.
Yeah. Rule of the people,
Mhm.
for the people, very much like
Yeah.
people based.
Yeah, it is. It's ultimately accessible. You know,
Yes.
it's and it sounds fundamentally like that. You know, it's given you a lot.
It really has.
Yeah, yeah,
It really has. I went, not to be too whatever, but I went from being homeless for a very long time
yeah,
to I just moved into a 2-bedroom house.
yeah.
You know, that I can afford. It's gonna be ramens and peanut butter and jelly for a while, so I may practice my ramen scrying, but like but you know, like I made it, you know,
Yeah,
so and I highly I'll die on the hill that it had something to do with witchcraft for
yeah.
sure.
No, yeah, I'm with you 100% on that one. It's been utterly transformative for me. You
Yeah.
know, it's been a very slow process. You know, that's one thing I do really understand, and that's why it really resonated to me when you talked about kind of your consistency and how you methodically went through things. Because it isn't kind of like a switch on and there you go, you know, at all. It's
And there's tons of pain. There's tons of
mm,
pain throughout it too. There's tons
mm,
of pain. There's tons of lessons learned.
mm,
Like I feel like even though going planetary is kind of outside of tradcraft or whatever, but I feel like Saturn is very much rules over transformativeness and witchcraft. Like it's very Saturnian. It's very like, oof, that hurts, Dad. Please stop. Like, you know, and then and then once you're done with like learning
yeah,
that lesson, it's like you look up and you're like, whoa, like,
yeah,
you know.
hmm
So,
yeah. Again, I think you're bang over the target with that as well. You know, I think it's innately Saturnian. Um, and the other part of it is that you know, you get the shit scared out of you. You
yeah.
really get the shit scared out of you. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know how it was for you, but like there's a certain amount of kind of like playing, you know, like and I say that in the gentlest way because I'm talking about me. That like I was, you know, when I started doing witchcraft and doing my own kind of spells and doing rituals, a lot of that was me kind of acting that out and trying it out like everybody does.
hmm
And then when something happens and you go, fuck, it's real. Like there is a kind of really surprising moment where you kind of realize you were kind of just playing up to that point, and then there's a line you cross, and you're like, no, no, this is real, you know. And that's a hell of an eye opener when that
It
happens,
is.
you
Those
know.
are some of my favorite moments
Mm,
too, I think. Not at the time, but
yeah,
looking back at it,
yeah,
when I'm just fucking around trying to like curse my ex with Hecate before, but it's just me playing around. And then all of a sudden it works. And
yeah,
then like there's this huge like man-eating spirit in my presence and
yeah,
everything is terrifying. Like you look back, you're like, oh fuck, that was fucking sick. But at the time you're like, oh my God, please don't. Like
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I love that we can have a laugh about this, because there's something like I find with the Dark Man a lot, and I'm kind of like reading through a lot of accounts of people who've experienced them as well, that he has a really innate sense of humor, like, and it's like it's not mean, it's not a mean
no.
sense of humor, but it's close, like
Yeah.
it's like here we'd say like he's a piss taker,
I was gonna
like
say it's
yeah,
very bathroom. It's very like bathroom humor.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I've noticed a lot of kind of groups forming like constellations of people, who are working with him in some form. Is that something that you've noticed? And we spoke about kind of that resurgence, kind of through and after lockdown.
Yeah,
Have you noticed that as well? Yeah.
yeah. I think there's been not even a resurgence, but there's been this like I would almost call it like an upheaval of like just like again going back to like the like basic puns with him, but like like there's been this like light shown on people and like and I truly see it and I was a part of it. I don't think it's ended right now either. I think the light is the spectrum of what the light hits is just getting wider and wider, and we're seeing him in many different forms. Because I think there's been like a discourse of people who do work with Lucifer where a lot of folks, it's mostly like the Solomonic folks, but like not that whatever, but it's mostly Solomonic folks but they think that all these portrayals of Lucifer are like belittling to them and not like of his terror or whatever. Yeah, fucking Lucifer's terrifying, but also like he likes to tell jokes and is like highly sexual. Like there's so many different levels and like and if you really go into a lot of his lore, like Lord of Wild Places, so nature is a big thing. Um, they have ties to the moon too. It's not just the sun. It's not just light. It's just an illuminating source. Um, ties to Venus with that like beauty and sexuality and queerness. Like, so I and speaking on queerness, I there has been such a huge like it's beautiful to see really but like just like the uproar of queer folks like taking on Lucifer in any form that they find them in, which I think is totally suitable because the idea behind Lucifer is to spread light and to spread themselves in the sexual aspect, in the spiritual aspect, in the all kinds of aspects. It's to spread themselves. They are light, they're spreading themselves. And so, whether it's through that corny TV show Lucifer, or whether it's from comic books and Marvel jumping on to Lucifer, and or whether it's like Arabia Lucifer or Solomonic Lucifer, it's the name that I feel has sort of been like um, people have been hesitant to reach for, and instead of being hesitant to reach for now, they're just kind of latching on and being like, "Yeah, this is my dog," and like that's so beautiful to see because they just really are fucking like life changing and they really do also give a a little like power boost, like a reignition of the witch flame, and that doesn't always have to be magical. It could be in arts or in politics or in um, communication, even technology, whatever. It's just the reignition of your inner self and your inner light. And that can do so many cool fucking things for our world right now. And we're in such a disgusting place worldwide right now. And like, I don't want to sound like one of those like spoiled Americans, but like, because I know America, we're in a, they like to think we're in a soft spot, but realistically, we're also burning, and not in the good way. And the world is just this like grossness, and like, it's horrible to see. And so I think that this like reaching out from the depths and grabbing onto the light has been, um, and can be and will be, just like, I honestly think, whether it's said that it is because of Lucifer, or whether it's because the people grasping onto that name do the things in the real world, it's just going to be transformative if it keeps going this way in a really positive way. So,
Oh, beautifully put. Yeah, beautifully put. You know, it's it's truly changing. You know,
yeah,
like I think it really, really changes oneself and how one see the world. You know, it, I didn't realize there was sometimes that tension with some people who thought that Lucifer was or perceived Lucifer as being kind of like slightly higher than kind of having some of these more bawdy aspects to his character, or to, I mean, to his avatars, whatever it is, you know,
right.
like,
I think it's the whole like
yeah,
edgelord thing where they're like, I
yeah,
only work with creatures from hell, and it's like, yeah, me too, dog. But like,
yeah,
like, but
like,
also like
yeah,
creatures from hell like to laugh. Like, it's not, like it's
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, uh, Orion Foxwood said this to me, but I chatted to him a while ago. I don't want to sound like that. I'm name dropping. I just don't want people to think that I came up with this. I didn't. Somebody
You're
else
fine.
did. Yeah. You know, but he told me a story where somebody said about, like, you know, well, who am I to tell God how to show up? You know, and that's it. Like, you know,
Literally.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. Because I know a lot of people do perceive like the dark man as winged. I've certainly perceived him that way. You know,
Same.
yeah, it's so strange. Do you ever get this? Do you ever look back and go like, I mean, I agree with you all the way. You know, this has been transformative for me as well. It's been a wonderful thing. It's been very slow, but sometimes I get these moments where I look back and I go, fuck me, my life's really got weird now. You know, I mean, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it, but it is weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it has.
Yeah,
I've been dating guys before, dating folks before, and
yeah.
like, moments where people come into my apartment and they're like, and they literally look around and just and walk out the door. And those are the moments where I'm like,
Oh God, that's
maybe I
brilliant.
shouldn't put the gold skull right in front of the door. Like, give him a few feet before.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that's hilarious.
So
Mm.
yes, I feel you.
Yeah, no, yeah, we I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I got asked at like it was at this kind of public enough forum from kind of like the other side of my life, you know. Well, you know, we're talking about, well, getting to know you, kind of icebreaker thing, and like what book are you reading at the moment was the question, you know, and I kind of sideswiped me, and I was like, oh yeah, not sure. I just trying to make something up, but like because it was such a kind of direct question, my immediate nature is just to kind of respond with exactly what I'm reading, you know, which was like something like Gemma Gary's The Devil's Dozen, you know, like,
Right.
you know, rituals to for the dark one. I'm like trying to think, but I couldn't think of anything like inane, or, you know, I couldn't. That was the problem. Like, that's what stumped me. It was like, I don't know any normal books, so I'm totally
Right.
immersed in this, you know, in my witch world, that I, you know, it's like I have no idea what's happening out of my like small bubble, you know.
Yeah. You're like, eat, pray, love.
Yeah, I think I said something like Harry Potter, you know, and like it was really bad because I've read none of them, and someone's like, "Oh, which one?" I'm like, "The first one." Like,
Yeah.
no idea what the title is, you know.
Well,
Just
the witches.
yeah, just it's just oh, it's just so. I mean, I was probably no one else knows. Just like yeah, whatever kind of socially awkward person, you know. They didn't realize the depth
Yeah.
of what was going on internally, you know. Oh man, that's hilarious. Um,
And even some of my like normal books that I read for fun, like I still find a way to incorporate them in witchcraft. Like I'm reading a book on and off, or I just read it when I'm bored. It's called Japanese Death Poems, and it's
yeah.
like a book of Japanese haiku. I don't know if you've heard it or read it before, but it's a brilliant book. It's a book of
Okay.
Japanese haikus
Yeah.
of monks on their deathbed,
Oh wow.
and yeah, it's beautiful.
Mm,
It's beautiful, and all of the poems are either about dying or the process
mm,
of, or whatever. And even then, I've been like, I wonder if I could use this in a spell, like like
yeah.
you're like reading through these things, like I wonder if I could. So yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's really cool. Taking a slightly different tack. What inspired you to start your show?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I've listened to shows like yours, and I listen to a bunch of witch podcasts, as any witch in the 21st century, I guess, does. Unless you're living the dream in the mountains somewhere. But um, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I felt like there, besides my mentor's podcast, I'll plug it really quickly, the
Mm,
Salty Witches podcast. There isn't a lot of that I found a lot of queer voices talking about very yeah, realistic ways of being and of living as a witch and an
mm,
openly queer witch and a openly queer person, as well as there isn't a lot of mixed Black people
mm,
talking about witchcraft. And we talk about like ATRs and voodoo and houdon and
mm,
all those things and the orishas and loa, but and candomblé and stuff like that. But there isn't a lot of young voices in it. And I just felt that there was and also like not like everyone's, like yours is fun, Salty Witches is fun, Austin's is fun. There's fun ones out there, but also we're missing, like I feel like we're missing or like leaving the fun creative part of witchcraft behind,
mm, mm,
and it's almost like a battle of the wits constantly,
mm,
and a armchair magician sort of like, well, I read this and I read that and I
mm,
did this and thing, and it's like, yeah, okay, cool, but like let's make it fun, like and um because if you're not having fun in your practice, then you're basically just doing like your masters, I think, right? Like you're not
yeah.
like
Yeah.
in you're not engaging in the fun parts of it or the
Mm,
scary parts, or so yeah, so I decided to try it out because I really enjoy online meme culture, and I really and I really like music,
mm,
and it was a dedication to Lucifer, especially
mm,
to work on my uh, listening to my voice back and being comfortable with the way that I sound. Because that's been something I've been working on spiritually. Because I never was comfortable with what I sound on recordings or when I
mm,
listen to myself back. So it was a little bit of a challenge and a devotion with the musical aspect, because I feel like Lucifer is very music heavy. Um, and a way that I communicate with Lucifer a lot actually is through music. And I didn't have any There's of course I forget their names, but they play music in theirs down at the crossroads. Um, but I didn't. I just wanted something that's like gonna make people either laugh, like shake their ass, or like feel like they're in the middle of a ritual. Like that's what I wanted, and and so and I also wanted a space to talk a bunch, like to be honest, because I didn't feel like there were a lot of voices like mine.
mm,
Um, and Yeah, so far it's been really also very transformative. It turned into this like safe space for like queer witches, into this like almost radio show esque thing. Um, and I've had people in like Kenya, queer people in Kenya, message me and be like, and there's not that many people listen to my podcast, but like queer people in Kenya messaging me being like, I've never heard anybody talk about it from this point of view. I was like, and it just like it makes me like teary eyed sometimes because I'm like, yo, dog, people are in Kenya are listening to me bitch about like,
That's
like,
wonderful. Yeah.
and having a light, I guess, and so
That's really wonderful. Congratulations! What a fantastic endeavor. That's really special.
thank you.
I I really enjoyed when you invited me on the show and then kind of asked me to pick some songs for the show. So
Yeah.
I really wasn't expecting that, and it kind of it reminded me of like, I mean, obviously, I think I'm twice your age, like making mixtapes. I was like, okay, and but also getting back into that teenage headspace of being like, I got to pick music that's cool, not too cool, but cool. And I'm from a totally different generation, so everything I think about is kind of be naff, So it kind of like it kind of really makes you think about kind of like, well, what do I want to say with these songs? What am I trying to say with them? Which is a really interesting way of kind of starting up that kind of connection and getting people into the headspace for the show. Yeah, it's great. Really, really great. Really, really cool idea.
Thank you. I love
Yeah,
surprising people with that question because I get them
great.
to say yes first, and then I
Yeah,
drop the question.
and we'll put the link in the show notes. But that's Lavender Scare. But look, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, Ken. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed our hour and a half. It's been lovely to catch up with you, and
yeah, you as
you
well.
really have a wealth of information about
Thank you.
plants. And I think the bit we're talking about now, people in the regular who hear the regular show won't have heard because we tend to, how I cut the show.
Yeah,
But really impressive wealth of knowledge. I love that description you mentioned, like the membrane. That's a
mm,
really interesting reflection. So thank you so much for your time, spending time with us on Spirit Box. Um,
thank you.
for those out there who want to hear more from you and your show, can you give them the full roster of your?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Keanu again, and I just want to say thank you, Derek. Before I go off and plug myself, thank you again for having me on. Again, it's a
My
really big
pleasure.
honor.
My pleasure.
Yeah, you can find me at Lavendula period Cathonia on Instagram, and if that's hard to spell, so it's hard for me to spell right away. You can find me on the Spotify podcast, the Lavender Scare podcast, and then I've linked my Instagram there if you're interested in more stuff.
Yeah, and it's a really great show. It's an absolutely great
Thank
show.
you.
So, if you're listening to this and you're sick of listening to me, go and listen to Keanu.
Thank
You
you.
don't have to do one or the other. You can enjoy both shows.
Right.
But there you go. Yeah, do
Cool.
check out Keanu's show. It's fantastic. And Ken, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure as well. You have a good rest of your day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Keanu. Remember to check out the show notes and do subscribe to the Lavender Scare. It's a great show and one I'm very honored to be a guest on. Okay, let's leave it there. I'm Dara Mason, and you've been listening to the Spirit Box. Take care and talk soon. Bye.